All right. I just wanted to start real quick by just welcoming everybody. Thank you for spending your Thursday night with us. As Democrats in Power Medina, we are very fortunate that we have the ability to be able to do these little educational Empower hours. We try to do at least one a month for free. In doing that, we do have to pay for this presentation mode, and it is a little bit costly. So if you are willing to help us offset some of that, we have a Venmo account, which is Democrats Empower Medina. And if you are willing to help us, thank you so much. Just a little bit about us before we get started. My name is Leah Nichols. I've worked on a bunch of different campaigns, mostly locally here in Medina County, ranging from school board all the way to state house, and then some different issue campaigns as well. I've been on a couple different committees within the Democratic groups and organizations, and currently I am the vice chair of the Medina Dems Club and sit on the steering committee for Democrats Empower Medina. And I will let Joe introduce himself.
Yeah, thanks. I'm Joe Nichols. I am an elected school board member in Medina here, and I've been in and around the Democratic Party nonstop for the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. I can't even remember how long we've been here. So yeah, I've been around.
All right. And just so you all know too, we're going to kind of start a little broad and then go in a little more detail as we get in. So if you feel a little bored in the first two slides, just stick around. I promise we'll have something for you.
Okay, so before we get into the meat and potatoes that everybody's here for, we just wanted to talk a little bit about the Democrats' history real quick because I know that not a lot of people know the things that we're about to hit on. So first off, as you see, founded in 1828 by supporters of Andrew Jackson to represent the common man and oppose elitism. Kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? And in addition to that, the donkey symbol, everybody wonders, where did the donkey symbol come from? So the donkey symbol was meant to represent the stubborn determination of the people of the party, which I can say that also sounds familiar, knowing all of us Democrats. And then on top of that, the core mission has always been to help the ordinary people and fight for fairness and equality. And while the Democrats, as a namesake, and since the 1828 founding, do have a little bit of a dicey history compared to what we consider acceptable for ourselves now, it's always been the guiding light that they used to make sure the party was going in the right direction.
All right. I think many of us know that we have a diverse coalition here in the Democratic Party. You've probably heard about the political spectrum multiple times. You can really kind of get pretty nitty gritty when it comes to the political spectrum and get down to about a million different ways of describing leftists, progressives, moderates, all these different groups. But to just kind of keep it simple, and what you hear a lot of is moderates, progressives, and activists. Moderates like more of an incremental progress through bipartisanship efforts. So you're looking at people who are like your Joe Biden or your Kristen Sinemas are more of your moderate Democrats, which you've probably also heard referred to as your mainstream or your centrist Democrats. Our progressive Democrats push for bold policies like Medicare for all, free college, and a Green New Deal. So you're looking at your Bernie Sanders or your Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And then when it comes to activists, they truly are the backbone of the Democratic Party. And they're really just ordinary people who organize their community around specific issues and candidates. So some progressive leaders on a national level you've probably heard of are Stacey Abrams, Greta Thunberg, Marsha P. Johnson, John Lewis. Some more groups are probably the Sunrise Movement, Black Lives Matter, Indivisible, and Move On. And we actually have a lot of activists and activist groups here in Medina County, but we'll touch on that a little more as we go on.
So this is the fun stuff to talk about, right? The core values of the Democratic Party. And despite the different sectors that Leah just touched on, everybody is pushing towards making these core values happen, and all of the decisions and goals revolve around these core values that you see on the screen right now. So first off, let's talk about healthcare real quick. So what the core value for Democrats for healthcare is expanding access to everybody, really. Nobody should deserve to be able to not afford healthcare and should have to suffer because they can't pay those bills. So many progressives that you look at on the further left end of the Democratic spectrum are the ones that are going to advocate for Medicare for all, right? The government funded healthcare plan that will cover everybody. Nobody's excluded from it, right? Now, looking at the second thing, climate change, another hotbed topic that the Democrats are create policies around and is one of their core values, right? So investing in clean and renewable energy is definitely one of the big points when it comes to climate change, in addition to reducing carbon emissions and rejoining the Paris Climate Accord, because that is a big thing that helps us push forward on climate change and get more in line with the rest of the world. Now, economic justice. So, raising minimum wage. And we don't even want to talk about it and call it minimum wage anymore. Let's call it a living wage, right? All Democrats, despite the sector that they fall into, are looking at raising that minimum wage, strengthening unions, and really giving the working man a voice, and reducing income inequality. Those are things that no matter where you fall, we can all really agree on. Then social justice. So making sure that every single human, it doesn't matter who you love, it doesn't matter what you look like, where you're from, what your gender is, you are entitled to human rights, basic human rights. We can all agree on that. Doesn't matter where you fall on. Next, education. So we want to make colleges more affordable, is a good thing to point out there, whether it's free college, free community college, or even reduced and a better solution than what we have now with the current loan crisis for anybody that ends up going to college, and more so improving public schools. So I mentioned that I am a school board member at Medina. If you haven't been paying attention to the news lately, especially after November, there is a massive attack on public schools, the funding, and the things that are being taught there. And Democrats are all for improving public schools and not taking away like we've seen currently. And finally, voting rights. We believe that everybody should have the ability to vote. It doesn't matter where you live, you should have access to vote. It doesn't matter how much you make, you should have access to vote. It doesn't matter if you voted once when you're 18 and now you're 70, you should still be able to walk in and have the opportunity to vote as an American citizen.
Oh, excuse me. All right. And then how to become a Democrat. So this is a question that we hear a lot. And then in the state of Ohio, because it is state by state, there are different ways to become you have registered Democrat, independent, Republican, whatever you may want to be. But here in Ohio, you can only do it, the only one and only way is during the primary election. You cannot go to the November election. It has to be during the primary. So you have to go during the primary and pull a Democratic primary ballot and vote on it. And that is how you become a Democrat. Now, I understand you're like, if I vote Democrat, what does it matter if I'm an independent? But there are some things that it does matter. Again, I'm not trying to tell you how to vote, but I do think that the most informed voters are the best voters. So, whatever decisions you make, I just want you to know that it does make a difference when you are signing candidate petitions. If a candidate is running as a Democrat, you cannot sign their petition unless you are a registered Democrat. When it comes to joining different committees, like the Central Committee, which we'll touch on a little bit later, that is something you cannot be on unless you're a registered Democrat. If you're a poll worker, we need, the same amount of poll workers when it comes to Democrats and Republicans. So if you are an independent, you cannot be a Democratic poll worker. Now, Democrats are really, 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 really well known for not engaging the way Republicans do. A Republican will call their representatives, will go and vote no matter what. Democrats need community to be able to do that. It's really been proven that psychologically, Democrats do better when they're around more Democrats. So, actually, the more Democrats we see in these areas, the more we are encouraging participation from other Democrats. I know a lot of us hear people say things like, "Oh my gosh, I thought I was the only Democrat around here." And well, one, you never are, but two, you are way more likely to vote and get others around you to vote if they see that there are more Democrats present. And lastly, as a campaign manager, resources, 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 resources from national level to the local level, just all over, from materials to donations to bodies and volunteers. All of these resources are decided based on who voted in the primary, how many people voted, are they Democrats, are they Republicans? We really break down a lot of this data, and resources are really decided based a lot on one, primary elections, but two, just the backlog of data. So if you want to see your Democrats have a lot of resources and be supported a lot by the party, we need more Democrats in the area.
Okay, so consider this slide the pop quiz slide. I hope everybody was paying attention to the last two slides that me and Leah talked about, because they definitely come full circle right on this one here. So Democratic Party's responsibilities is clearly winning elections, and then developing policies that improve people's lives, and then advocating for the justice and equality of all human beings, all Americans in the United States. So, first off, the electoral focus. You need to elect Democrats at all levels of government. And it doesn't matter if it is the lowest, most rural, smallest community school board, all the way up to the presidency. Everybody has a hand in that, and electing Democrats at all levels is a responsibility that the party has. In addition to that, what Leah just mentioned, here's the pop quiz from Leah's last slide, is providing resources for candidates, for local parties, if you're talking about like the DNC, those type of things. So you're looking at funding, training, voter mobilization, and campaign support specifically for candidates also. On the policy development side, Democrats create platforms and policies to address the nation's issues. So we're looking at things like I talked about in my last slide: healthcare, climate change, economic inequality. And you can look at an example of a policy change of the Democrats by looking at the Affordable Care Act, right? That was a Democratic pushed policy that finally made it through, just barely squeaked through, but it only happened because of the responsibility and the feeling to do what's right for all Americans of the Democratic Party. And finally, advocacy. The party advocates for marginalized communities and works to expand and protect the rights of every single citizen. So, voting rights, civil rights, social justice issues, all of it is part of the responsibilities of the Democratic Party.
All right. Um, I'm having a little bit of sound issue, tech issues on my end. So I was actually going to see if Joe could, if I stop screen sharing, could you screen share this and play the video if I drop the video link in the chat?
Yeah, let me give it a try.
Or I guess you the video link, but because you have a mic, so you might be able to. Sorry, don't mind us. I promise that I tried to troubleshoot this before, and just in the panel it's a little different than in a regular Zoom, so just give us a second. I apologize.
Yeah, it's not letting me do it either.
Okay. It's a little bit unorthodox, but I do think I did just drop it in the chat. Do we just maybe want to watch? Because the thing is, this really explains super well the primaries and the caucuses. So I'm not sure if we want to have everybody just watch the video on their own or if maybe we want to explain it a little bit.
I
Or you know what? Let me try the video. Let's see, because I do see looks like Mike just said my sound has been good. So I don't know if this will work. If you can't hear it, please let me know. No sound?
No
Nope, not
sound.
come through.
Okay. Okay, so that's not going to work for us. Again, I apologize. You're going to have to deal with me talking a little bit. If you want to go watch the video, that's fine. But the primaries versus caucuses is really just trying to explain to you how the DNC is done and how we kind of choose our president. Here in Ohio, we have primaries. So that is when you become a Democrat, where you would go out there and you would pull a Democratic ballot and you would vote. Other places they do caucuses, and that's you still have a person who is there and somebody that you have chosen and is elected to go and be on your behalf. Oh man, I'm just trying to like recap this video. Just give me a second. My brain is not functioning because it was so good. It did probably what I could do in 8 minutes in two. But it really just explains how the DNC functions and how different states do it different ways. So you either have a primary or a caucus, and then you go to the DNC. These delegates who we send to the DNC from the caucus are the people who are then representing us there. And at the DNC is going to be where, not only do we have our presidential nominee decided, but we also at the DNC have our 4-year party platform. There are committees that are done at the DNC that then the committees then all get together and present their drafts and we come up with a party platform. Um, So after we have the party platform, let me see. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything super important that I wanted to tell you about that. The DNC does happen every 4 years. And then that is again, every 4 years we get the new party platform. So the other ways that decisions are made are through the grassroots influence. We talked about how those movements can shift the party's priorities and kind of change a little bit. And the tension between the grassroots groups and the corporate donors, as Joe talked about earlier, will make a difference. Leaderships in our committees, so party leaders, one of them being the DNC, they set the rules. They set the rules for the primaries, the debates, and the fundraising. Our congressional leaders as well. So you're looking at like the Senate Majority Leader and the House Speaker who shape our legislative agenda. And then also our state and local party leaders. I know we have Mike Kovac, who is our local party leader on the call tonight. They help and they decide endorsements and campaign strategies for the area as well. And then I think we all know our elected officials are going to be drafting and voting on legislation for us that aligns with the party's values. And our high profile leaders, like the president, will help set the national agenda for the 4 years as well that they are in office. And I'm sure we all know about polling and public input because I can tell you I am so sick of the polls after this 2024 election, but I'm sure we'll be seeing more of them because that is a way that they can hear from us as well as town halls or other places in public where you get to go and express your concerns and what you want to see the party do.
Okay, so come along with me. Let's take a trip. All right. Let's play some D&D quick. Theater of mind. Imagine a pyramid, right? At the very top you have the DNC. In the middle you have the state party, and at the bottom, the base, you have your local party. That's what we're talking about here with the Democratic Party pyramid. So, like I had mentioned, the DNC is at the top. That sets the national strategy and the rules and platforms that the Democratic Party at all levels are going to end up using, and especially the national level, right? So, right in the middle, that slice that we imagined right in the middle, that's your state party. So, Ohio Democratic Party in our instance here. It focuses on statewide elections and delegate selections. So sending delegates to the national convention and those type of things, they have a hand in. Then your local party, that's the base of your pyramid that we just imagined. What is that going to do? That is going to drive your grassroots efforts and support your local candidates. It doesn't matter if it's a school board member, a city council member, or somebody running at the county level. That is going to be all under that local party umbrella. As Leah mentioned in the slide previous, talking about corporate versus grassroots influences. So, corporate influence, we can love and hate it. There are good things that happen within corporate influence, but what is it? We're talking about big donors and lobbyists that affect the way that policy happens and affects the way that certain elected officials may choose to vote. They often tend to push for more of a moderate, a mainstream style, a little bit safer policy movement, and not so much moving things further, more drastically down the political spectrum, if you will. So, good examples of this are things like school boards, right? There's school board coalitions that go down to the state house and they lobby and advocate for proper school board education policies and funding and things like that. You have potentially worse donors that most of us hate that use their money and their influence in order to push things kind of more of a negative manner. Think of possibly fossil fuel industries trying to get rid of clean and renewable energy, something like that. And next we have the grassroots influence, right? So what is the grassroots influence in opposition to our corporate influence? So the grassroots influence, that's going to be your activists and your small donors. And that's going to be the sector of the party influence that is going to push the party towards more progressive, more stronger left-leaning policies. So if you want to think about small donor examples, you can look at something like, on a bigger scale, Bernie Sanders' race, right? He said, give me $7 or $17. It was a small amount compared to what a lot of the campaigns were asking for. And he said, if 100,000 people give me $7, right? Let's say that's $700,000. Something smaller where it's a small difference and you don't have to be a billionaire to make that difference, but a bunch of us together can make that difference. And that's a good way to look at it too, is all of us kind of, for the most part, probably fall under that grassroots influence, depending on what we do within trying to work with the party, right? And there is a fine line there, though, where the party's ideological direction and policy can be affected kind of both ways, where you look at something like the Green New Deal, and there was an advocacy and a push for that clean energy, but it also helped allow for the fossil fuel industry to not completely get nothing out of it, right? There was a little bit of a balance there, despite it being a drastic push towards clean, green, renewable energy.
All right. So right here we have the Democratic Party organizational chart to try to make it make a little bit more sense, give you a little more context. You can see, first of all, the purple we're going to ignore right now. So if you look at these, the colors are kind of set by county, by state, and then further up. So you will see the Medina County Democratic Party, the state party, and then our national party. When it comes to our county party, we are represented in it. We do vote on somebody to be a part of our central committee over here. You will see in Medina County, we have 121 precincts. And in every precinct, we have one person who is elected every 4 years. And that person serves as your central committee person. Then your central committee gets to elect your executive committee officers in the executive committee. Your executive committee is in charge of the day-to-day operations of the party. And then you will see when it comes up to the state, it's very similarly run where we have a state central committee. On the central committee for the state party, we have 33 districts. And instead of one representative, because they serve larger areas, we have one male and one female from each of those areas. And those are also voted on every 4 years. Similarly to the county, the state central committee will, the state central committee will vote on the state executive committee. And then the state executive committee elects the members who go to the DNC. When we come over here to the social clubs, real quick, Democrats Empower Medina is a social club, but it's also more of a grassroots organization where it doesn't fall necessarily under any of the parties, but we do work with all of the other Democratic organizations as Democrats. Then it comes to our city clubs. Our city clubs are the Medina Democratic Club, the Northern Medina County Dems, and then the Wadsworth Democratic Club, which serves our three major cities. Those all do fall underneath the party. And if we did have a young Dems or some kind of college Dems active, they would also be a part of that group. So they aren't necessarily a part of the huge moving voting machine, but they do keep things active and kind of help, again, more localize everything. So that way we have more people involved.
All right, so let's talk about the Democratic National Committee. So what do they kind of do? So one of their responsibilities is to set rules for presidential primaries and caucuses. So determining a schedule, delegate allocation, and rules for the presidential nomination process. If you want to look at an example of when they had to flex the power to determine the schedule, you don't have to look very far in history. We can look just a short couple years ago in 2020. The DNC adjusted the primary debate schedule to ensure a more diverse lineup of candidates. So it's nice that we have an example of that right there for us and how they use that power. They also organize the national convention. So as Leah had mentioned, every 4 years, the DNC goes, plans, hosts the national convention, and the party nominates their presidential candidate and adopts its platform. In addition to that, something that I wanted to mention is the Democratic Party has been also trying to up its game a little bit and get more of the conversation of the convention out there to various groups and ages. So this last year, they actually invited social media and content creators to come in and record various things to kind of showcase to their audience, hey, this is what the Democratic National Convention is about. This is what the Democrats are about. Interested? Come and find out more. Then after that, fundraising and resource allocation. So we had kind of touched on this before. The DNC ends up raising money to support Democratic candidates across all levels of that pyramid that we talked about. And then they also distribute those resources to the state parties, candidates, campaigns. But once again, like Leah mentioned, those primary numbers, making sure that you're registered as a Democrat and not an independent or not doing a Republican vote for whatever reason you might have for that, that is going to affect those resources that the next year's crop of candidates and elections and campaigns will get. Then it also shapes the party's national direction. So it drafts up a platform on what the party at all levels should kind of strive to do over the course of X amount of years. And usually it tends to be 4 years. It also sets the tone for the party's messaging and the strategy on how to go about electing Democrats and getting them in these positions, whether it's a strong blue area or if it's a super red state like little old Ohio, right? And finally, the DNC supports state and local parties. So the DNC will provide tools, training, and funding towards the state and local parties. And in doing that, it also helps advocate for building of strong communities and strong grassroots networks.
All right. And then to move on to our state parties. So, of course, ours is the Ohio Democratic Party. A lot of their job is statewide, but also bridging the gap between the national party and the local parties. So, they are in charge of our state elections. When you think of our governor race, US Senate, state legislators, stuff like that, they are instrumental in helping with those. We went over a little bit of the delegate selection. So, the state parties select delegates to represent their state at the DNC, and these delegates vote to nominate the party's presidential candidate. They help with candidate endorsement. A lot of times, if a state party is to endorse and a primary, it is a huge uplift of support to a candidate. Not all state parties do this, depends on the state and kind of the leadership that they have at the time. Um, and then, of course, when it comes to endorsements, that is something that they're really, big on too when it comes to that. And then again, just fundraising and campaign support from the top down is super important. So they help with fundraising, they help with mobilizing our voters and our volunteer efforts, and to kind of help build up some of our local events and training as well there.
Now, finally, the local parties. So here we have the Medina County Democratic Party, but just speaking as local parties in general under the Democratic umbrella, you're looking at focus on local elections. So your local party, pretty simple, pretty common sense thing, right? They are going to support your candidates at city council, school board, mayor, county races, various other local offices that might be on the ballot that are under the local umbrella. In addition to that, you have grassroots organizing. So one of the ways that the Democratic Party locally can kind of work on that grassroots organizing and does work on the grassroots organizing is leading door knocking and phone banking campaigns to try and get the word out about Democrats and Democratic policies. And this is one of those very critical things where the grassroots organizing is really that community building, creating community events in addition to door knocking and phone banking, but also town halls and getting voters interested and engaged and trying to build support around not only candidates but the Democratic Party and message itself. Then delegate uh, they also select delegates locally to send to the state convention. And what that really does is that makes sure that at that local party level, that county level, their area is represented specifically. And any issues that might be kind of more localized to the county itself, there's representation at that state convention to have conversations and spread the word about that. And then advocacy for local issues. I kind of just touched on it also, but the local party advocates for policies that are going to impact their communities or do severely impact their communities, whether it's something like affordable housing, public transit, or education funding at the local level. So a good example of this is trying to back pushing like a resolution for climate change or LTB, LTB. Oh, it went out of my head. But the various other communities um, and advocate for resolutions to make sure that everybody is getting a fair shake within the community.
Right. And then that brings us to our grassroots organizations. And they truly play a vital role here in the Democratic Party. And even though they operate outside of the formal party structure, they really are the catalyst for change and help us adopt progressive policies, mobilize voters, and hold our elected officials, I can't talk either, geez, hold our elected officials accountable while we work together on our shared goals as well. So a lot of here in Medina, I feel like we are very, very lucky that we have a lot of local grassroots organizations. If anybody on this call is looking for a place to be, a place to land, a place to join, please email Democrats Empower Medina at gmail.com and let me know what you're looking for, and I will be happy to set you up with the right group. Whether you are looking, we are more like here about education and mutual aid and community building, or you're looking for just stuff about education or just climate change or just direct action, I can almost guarantee we have a group here for you. So please feel free to reach out. We'll happy to connect you. And something that I always try to really explain to people when you are coming into politics is us grassroots people here on this call tonight, we are not expected to show up and be politicians. Matter of fact, nobody wants you to show up and be a politician. We want you to show up and be you. And in doing that is really how we have moved forward as a party. And when I say move forward, I really mean, like those core values that we talked about, advancing policies and groups and organizations that are helping with that kind of stuff. That has always been based around grassroots organizing. A story that I have always found very interesting is the how canvassing began. Now, I'm sure most of us know about canvassing, where everyone goes and knocks on your door, and they either talk to you about a candidate or an issue. But that was just started by somebody who really wasn't that involved in politics at all. They were involved in an environmental group, and that environmental group got government funding. And as anybody here who works with government funding knows, those funds go away a lot quicker than you would hope. And they were sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, we need more funds. What are we going to do with this environmental group? We can't do all the things we need to do. And this man said, I know what to do. I sell encyclopedias door to door. I know how to go door to door and get people to give me money. So that's what he did. And he went door to door for this environmental nonprofit and he raised the funds he needed. Soon enough, he actually quit his job selling encyclopedias and moved into a hub that was the first canvassing hub. Once he moved into that hub, it wasn't long before it wasn't just environmental groups, but every group, including candidates, were knocking on his door saying, you got to teach me what you're doing. It is making such a difference out there. So it really is just bringing your everyday talents and the things that you know how to do outside of politics into politics, just making that gap, bridging that gap that we have here in politics, and really just making our grassroots even stronger.
All right, how to stay informed? Isn't that the trickiest thing? So, how to stay informed? First off, sounds like a no-brainer, but follow reliable news sources, right? You're looking at things like NPR and PBS. Those are great, unbiased, fact-driven news sources that you can go to really get kind of to the meat of what's happening and not have such a distorted view from other news outlets that many people tend to go to. Um, Secondly, engage on social media. I know a bunch of people on the call today, and myself and Leah, we follow a million different people, organizations, activists, everything that have to do with the Democrats and the democratic process on various social media platforms. So this could be something from AOC, Bernie Sanders, or something more centralized if you're looking at something like Joe Biden or Chuck Schumer, something like that. And then organizations, there's so many organizations that push forward the democratic core values that we had talked about, and activists and activist groups also. Leah mentioned Democrats Empower Medina, and there's various other ones, even especially locally, that are just looking to engage with anyone on social media. And if you really like what you hear from those groups, they might have a newsletter that you can potentially sign up for and get it into your email to just make sure you're not missing anything and make sure that you get everything directly to your email. I know a lot of us are typically pretty tied to our emails for one reason or another. So sometimes that's a better way to tackle that if you aren't always on social media. And then lastly, attend events. This is such a big thing that people really need to do if they want their voice to be heard and they want to be seen in these groups and communities and really get their opinions and their voice out within the Democratic Party. So things like town halls, rallies, local Democratic meetings, various platforms and places like that are just so great to go and get involved and make sure you're being heard and not at home silent.
All right. And then our last slide here for you tonight. This is a couple of our upcoming events here at Democrats Empower Medina. I also want to just go over some quick ways to get involved. But if you want to stay involved with us, we have an upcoming Empower Hour, which is going to be over reproductive rights with Nikki, who is the founder of Take Back Trust and is also an OBGYN. So she will be there to answer any questions you might have. We also have a general meeting coming up for Democrats Empower Medina. That's going to be in person at the library where you can come and you can learn all about us and how to get involved. Um, in addition to us, of course, there's lots of other people out there who, again, if you email Democrats Empower Medina, I would be happy to connect you with our local grassroots groups. But there are other things that you can do amongst this, which is, follow your local parties, your local grassroots groups, as Joe was saying. And volunteering is huge. Donating is huge. Again, grassroots donations are everything. I know you don't think that your $5 means a lot, but if five people sends $5, it starts to add up real fast. And something that I really want to say again, which I know a lot of us are doing, and I'm sure we're all sick of hearing, is the Five Calls app. There's a lot going on right now. One of the best things that you can do is have your voice heard, and the Five Calls app will, if you download it, actually give you scripts to call and talk to your representatives. It doesn't matter if they're Democrats, it doesn't matter if they're Republicans. You want to make sure that you're making those calls. And also, while you're making those calls, I just want to let you know I had a meeting with Max Miller's staffers at his office, and they informed us that they're having to hire interns because of the call volumes. So they're working, they're listening to us, they're having to hear us. So please, please, please do not stop. Before we wrap up tonight, I do just want to ask if anyone has any questions. I know Danielle Zanin has been monitoring the chat. I haven't kept up with it, so I don't know.
There were some really good questions in there, but thank you, Pam Miller, and she answered most of them, I think. So,
Fantastic.
right
Thank you,
now,
Pam.
if you have any others that weren't answered, drop them. And if not, you can email us, which I will add that to the chat as well.
Yes, thank you so much, Danielle. And again, we love hosting these free Empower Hours. And if you're able to help us offset any of the cost, if you can Venmo us at Democrats Empower Medina, that would be insanely helpful. Thank you so much. Um, Again, if you also think of any questions that you have later, please, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'll be happy to answer them at any point. And that's Democrats Empower Medina at gmail.com. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you guys. Good night.
Yep,
Yes,
thank
thank
you.
you. Have a good one.